Hello and welcome to Oceania Weekly. I'm Stephanie Greenfield. Drone users might soon need a licence to fly one. They could also be pinged by police and seized if they break the law. The New Zealand government is looking at a broad range of drone regulations. These regulations will support commercial use. However, they will protect citizens and spaces such as airports from unlawful activity. Last year, 50 times more drones were used in New Zealand than there were planes in the country, 77,000 by Kiwis and more than 200,000 by tourists, compared with only 5,000 piloted aircraft. Transport Minister Phil Twyford set out on how drones can be better incorporated into the transport sector. He said the Ministry of Transport was currently consulting on the potential for new powers. Twyford said in the coming decades, almost every economic sector would benefit from drones and that recreational uses would increase. Australia's government is deeply disappointed that Chinese-Australian writer and former diplomat Yang Hengjin has been moved to criminal detention in China. The government has confirmed his transfer, but is still seeking clarifications over the reasons for his detention. The former diplomat with China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who became a pro-democracy campaigner, was being held in Guangzhou after arriving from the US in January. The 53-year-old, who has held Australian citizenship since 2002, has a doctorate from the University of Technology, Sydney. He was also living in New York as a visiting scholar at Columbia University. Australian officials have visited Dr. Yang in detention 6 times, most recently on June the 27th. Auckland motorists have been fined an astonishing $9 million in less than 12 months for driving in bus lanes during peak hour traffic. The figures, released to the Herald under the Official Information Act, show 60,762 fines were issued by Auckland Transport from CCTV cameras in Fanshawe Street, Queen Street, Hobson Street, Grafton Bridge and Khyber Pass Road in 2018 and 2019. A further 1,158 tickets were issued in Fanshawe Street in 2017, earning an extra $173,700 and taking the total revenue collected to $9.19 million. It's a $150 fine for driving the bus lane during restricted times. Statistics New Zealand is under fire after revealing it only collected individual census forms from 2/3 of Māori. The data agency said it collected responses from 4.2 million people, despite the expected population of New Zealand to have reached 5 million by the end of the year. It is also against the law not to take part in the census. However, around 700,000 Kiwis did not participate. The other statistics are being filled out with data collected from other government sources, bringing the total coverage to 98.6%. Only 83.3% filled out individual forms, which Statistics New Zealand called the traditional New Zealand method, but only 68.2% of Māori did. This is down from the 2013's response rate of 88.5%. Even fewer Pacific Islanders took part, only 65.1%, down from 88.3%. The fall in the overall rate from 92.2% to 83.3% was far smaller. 6 people were injured following a large gas explosion in the Christchurch suburb of Northwood. Their statuses range from critical to moderate. Fire and Emergency New Zealand confirmed a house was totally destroyed, with damage caused to surrounding houses. At least 50 surrounding properties were evacuated. Gas and power were turned off to Marble Court and Brookwater Avenue. Debris could be seen all over the road. Cordons were in place and people were asked to avoid the area. WorkSafe will work with police and FENZ to investigate the incident. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has emerged from talks with her Australian counterpart in Melbourne with nothing solid to show for it. She had promised to raise Australia's deportation policy when she sat down with Scott Morrison, calling it corrosive. But Australia is not backing down. Ms Ardern said that New Zealanders look at this policy and think it's not fair dinkum. Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, speaking ahead of the meeting, warned the policy would not be changed. Successive New Zealand governments have raised concern with the policy after more than 1,500 Kiwi criminals were deported since the rules were tightened in 2014. Hyundai Motors' labour union has started preparations to go on strike. This is due to the breakdown of negotiations with the Korean car company over wages and the collective agreement. If the union stages a strike, it would mark the 8th consecutive year that the union has held a walkout. The South Korean Car Makers Union, which is under the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, announced the collapse of negotiations. They walked away from the table after only 30 minutes at the 16th collective bargaining held at Ulsan last week. Earlier, the union demanded that the management provide a proposal for this year's wages and collective agreement, but this has been rejected by the company. Hyundai and its labour union have continued negotiations since May, however have failed to narrow the gap over the wage system. A Whanganui heritage building that was severely damaged last Saturday was housing a number of works by local artists. Whanganui Mayor Hamish McDowell said that the fire centred around the 110-year-old Thane building will cause a lot of distress across the community. The fire broke out at around 9 p.m. last Saturday night and has left a 42-year-old man in a stable but critical condition in hospital. A second person, who self-reported to hospital, has since been discharged. The building itself is believed to have suffered extensive damage. India's space agency said it will launch a spacecraft to the south pole of the moon this week. India's space agency said that an expert committee identified the root cause of the previous technical snag, and all corrective actions were now implemented. Chandrayaan, the Sanskrit word for mooncraft, is designed to make a soft landing on the lunar south pole. It will send a rover to explore water deposits that were confirmed by a previous orbiting Indian space mission. The new launch schedule came sooner than expected. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that Australia and New Zealand can be examples to the world on encouraging trade and not retreating behind protectionist barriers. Ardern addressed the Australian and New Zealand School of Government at the Melbourne Town Hall on the subject of good government. She said good government matters because government affects everything. She also said leaders globally are facing a rising tide of public suspicion towards government. For countries like Australia and New Zealand, this means prioritising international rules and norms that work for all countries. The 15th inaugural ceremony of the Korean Society of Auckland was held last Saturday afternoon, the 20th July, in Auckland. Mrs. Kyung Suk Wilson was elected as Society's president on June 15th, and her term commenced on the 1st of July 2019. Over the past 20 days, Mrs. Wilson appointed the new executive officers who will help to advance Korean Society of Auckland's advocacy and projects. The executive committee members were officially presented during the ceremony. The Consul General of the Republic of Korea, Bae Kwang-hong, Auckland Mayor Phil Goff, MP Melissa Lee from the National Party, and the chairperson of the multicultural sector, Romi Udanga from the Labour Party, graced the event. Director Jung Il-young from the Korean Education Centre in New Zealand, and the Honorary Consul General Slavic Republic, Peter Keeley, Honorary Consul Switzerland, Consulate of Switzerland, Dr. Adrian Blazer, as well as from Auckland City Council, Chris Darby, Paul Young, Wayne Walker and Anne-Elise Smithson were present too. Around 180 local Koreans, Kiwis and other ethnic group representatives celebrated with the newly installed Executive Committee, who expressed well wishes and agreed to work closely in the future. Now we're going to cross over to Voice of America.
Yes, Mr. Prime Minister.
Pakistan's Prime Minister is seeking to restore US aid to his country, which Trump ended last year, saying that Islamabad was not doing enough to fight extremism.
The problem was Pakistan, this is before you, Pakistan was not doing anything for us. They were really, I think, subversive. They were going against us. I tell you what, to be honest, I think we have a better relationship with Pakistan right now than we did when we were paying that money.
Trump blamed the previous U.S. administration for a lack of Pakistan's cooperation.
I think Pakistan can do a tremendous amount against with respect to Afghanistan. They didn't do it, and I don't blame them because they were dealing with the wrong president. Who knows? But I think Pakistan could have done. They're helping us a lot now. I think they could have helped us a lot in the past.
Trump said the U.S. aid, amounting to about $1.3 billion, could be restored to Pakistan depending on what's worked out. He wants Pakistan's cooperation on reaching a deal with the Taliban to end the war in Afghanistan and withdraw U.S. troops from there after close to 19 years.
I think Pakistan's going to help us out to extricate ourselves. We're like policemen. We're not fighting a war. If we wanted to fight a war in Afghanistan and win it, I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people.
Khan said there is no military solution in Afghanistan.
I feel, and I think we will discuss this, it's the closest we have been to a peace deal. And we hope that in the coming days, we will be able to urge the Taliban to speak to the Afghan government and come to a settlement, a political solution.
So far, Taliban leaders have refused to negotiate directly with the government in Kabul, calling it illegitimate and a puppet of the United States. The group has met with U.S. representatives for 7 rounds of peace talks. Negotiators have claimed progress in the latest round of talks that began June 29th in Doha, Qatar, but at the same time, a Taliban attack in Afghanistan killed 25 people. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Thank you for joining us here at Oceania Weekly. I'll see you next week.